Good morning, it's Gary Rogers, Noggin Doctor again. Let's talk about helmeting today. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the helmeting process, what's involved, the indications for it, and the like, also the outcomes. I think there's a lot of debate about that, even in the medical community. So let's chat a bit about what's going on. Helmeting is something that is a fairly recent phenomenon. In 1979, Sterling Claren, pediatrician in Seattle, Washington, University of Washington gave up the first helmet and wrote some papers on it. It was compelling empirical findings, and there wasn't great randomized controlled trials, but the concept caught on, and people started using this for plagiocephaly. So note that was 1979, long before the Back to Sleep campaign. So plagiocephaly was out there. Back to Sleep campaign did not cause plagiocephaly. It merely accelerated the progress of flattening, which makes it obviously the incidence higher. So Claren did this. Other people began to start the helmeting process, and then eventually Cranial Technology took this to the FDA, got an FDA approval, so the helmet became an FDA-approved medical device. And here we are. We're now 2025, so we're a long ways past the Back to Sleep campaign. We're a long ways past the inception of helmeting, and then the question is, what's it doing? So how does the helmet work? A helmet works by holding. It doesn't compress the head. It can't mold it like clay. It holds the sides that have overgrown conceptually, whether it be an asymmetry or brachycephaly, and lets the flatter area, the undergrown area, grow out. So it corrects through growth. So that's why there's a time frame which you can helmet successfully and a time frame after which you can't, because you're relying on the brain to expand and develop, and that's what creates a correction. And so it does this over time. So the younger child is obviously the faster the correction, albeit, one of the reasons people don't helmet at, say, 2 months of age is we don't want to overshoot and start helmeting everybody. So usually we wait a while to see if natural correction will happen and the baby will start to unwind some of the risk factors for it. But if they get to 4 or 5 months of age and the head looks, enough, irregular enough in terms of flattening or asymmetry, a helmet may be an option. And so the helmet is something that, because it's a brace, it's worn as often as possible, which means 20 to plus hours a day. Most orthotic shops say 23 hours. The reason for that is if you take it off half the time, the head will grow in all areas and the fit will deteriorate very quickly. So it's very important to wear this consistently over time to get the best effect. And then, of course, the biggest pitfall in this is the orthotist. So the orthotist can make it or break it. It's like a contractor for your house or any other, or a surgeon for that matter. You get a good one, they do a great job, they're going to have a good effect. You do a bad one, you work with a bad one, I've seen people helmet for 3 months where they've had zero improvement at all. So helmeting it relies heavily on the make of the helmet and the way it's fitted and the way it's designed. But if it's done consistently, the question is, does it work? Well, there's many, many, many studies. I will say there's only one randomized controlled trial, but there's many studies that case control, retrospective studies that show that helmeting works. I can just tell you, as a clinician doing this for years, I have no relationship to helmet companies, it absolutely does work. I've had parents go along for 4 or 5 months, observe, try repositioning, and they put a helmet on. In 3 weeks, the head looks significantly better. So empirically, absolutely works, for no question. And that's in contrast to the only randomized controlled trial that's been done, which is in the British Medical Journal, the BMJ paper that was supposed to be a randomized controlled trial. Unfortunately, like we just said, helmeting is the crux of this whole thing. So in that paper, it's unclear who did the helmet, how compliant people were with the helmeting process, the duration, etc. was not well standardized. So I would say that, in the absence of knowing who the orthotist is and how they've done this helmeting, I'm not entirely sure I can hang my hat on that. And knowing what I know empirically and what I've seen in other literature, there's many, many studies out there. Again, not randomized controlled, but there are studies and comparison studies, and the helmet does seem to have an effect. So helmeting, I think, generally works. Do you ever need a helmet? I have parents all the time say, doctor said I need a helmet, or the orthotist said I need a helmet. No. There is no medical indication for a helmet. It is a corrective thing for aesthetics. It makes the head look better, which is a very noble cause, and I think for a parent, absolutely important. And if a parent wants that, it should be their prerogative. If a child develops acquired flattening due to no fault of their own, torticollis, prematurity, developmental delay, the risk factors, parents should absolutely have the option of putting a helmet on and correcting that. That's my feeling. But the idea that somehow it's going to make your kid smarter to put a helmet on, or it's going to correct some TMJ dysfunction or crossbite, there are studies that show early crossbite with asymmetry, TMJ, and the ear position will change. The thing that these studies don't show is the long-term follow-up. If you look at long-term follow-up, it's unequivocal that these things improve with time. We don't see, after back to sleep, when it's a huge rise in plagiarism, we don't see lots of kids with frostbite, more kids epidemiologically. There's no data that the development, TMJ dysfunction, ear infections, across all these things skyrocketed with back to sleep. There's no data whatsoever. So empirically, it's just not fact. And to people who have a hard time wearing helmets and things, I would point out that, helmeting is something that's done only in the Western world. There's only a few countries in the world where helmets are ubiquitous or accessible. The rest of the countries, I would say 99% of the world's population does not have access to helmets. And yet people survive, put helmets on, wear corrective glasses, wear sunglasses, do all the things that the helmet shops sometimes say you won't be able to do. They seem to do just fine. I mean, in Asia, most countries in Asia do not have a helmet shop. Flattening is very, very ubiquitous, and it's from cultural reasons as well as anthropometric reasons. But the point of it is, people do fine. They wear hats, they wear helmets, they ride bikes, they do the same thing we do, and glasses, and function well in life and do things like that. So the idea that somehow if you don't helmet your child, you're going to end up disadvantaging them is completely incorrect. Anyway, that's for today.